So this video we're going to look at enterprise bargaining and its relationship with external stability. We're not going to go into the definitions greatly of enterprise bargaining and external stability because I'm sure you're pretty much sick of it. We've gone through this many times. And so we know that external stability is CAD to GDP of 3 to 4%. We know that is achieved when we have NFD, a sustainable NFD, and a stable dollar. So we're just going to take this for granted. That's external stability. External stability is achieved through these three pillars. And the main pillar, or the main goal of external stability, is for this CAD to GDP ratio of 3 to 4% to be achieved. Okay, and as we all know, enterprise bargaining leads to increased productivity, which means an increase or better allocation of resources. So that's the source of this aggregate supply side policy, is to increase our productivity, especially that of labor. So how does that in fact relate to external stability? Well, firstly, we know that an increased productivity of labor means output increases relative to input, which we're going to just say stays relatively constant. So what this means is that we are able to produce at a far lower cost, which keeps real unit labor costs down, ease cost inflation, and as well as keep prices down. So when we keep our prices down, we can see that exports become relatively more competitive in the international market. Because of this onset of globalization, we can see that because we're keeping our domestic prices down, when we export these domestic goods and services, they are relatively more competitive compared to other countries with less or lower productivity levels of their labor. So what this means is that in the long run, we can see that as our exports become more competitive, we will export more. So why is this a good thing? It's because we come back to this idea of the CAD, the current account deficit, which is the major reason why we are externally unstable at the moment. So this CAD, the current account deficit, is primarily, or one of the major factors contributing to this current account deficit, is this idea we have an imbalance of exports to imports. Exports and imports. Because of our strong dollar at the moment, we are importing more than we are exporting. Particularly, we are importing these goods and services from other countries because it is so expensive here. So with trade liberalization and with enterprise bargaining, we can see that when we export more, we will see that credits in this current account would actually increase relative to our debits, which are imports. And so as a result, a current account deficit can be lowered. And this again feeds into our net foreign debt, which is an accumulation of our current account deficits. With our net foreign debt decreasing, we will see that two pillars have been achieved. And also with a very large export base, and as we export more, then we have a strong dollar. And you can look at the relationship between the dollar and our exports in that video under external stability. For now, we're just going to assume that when we export more, people need to buy more of the dollar in order to purchase our exports, and so that appreciates the dollar. So that's how enterprise bargaining can help lower our current account deficit compared to this old minimum wage system, or the centralized wage system, where they kept labor costs relatively high, and so that made our exports relatively less competitive as firms try to maintain their profit margin by upping the price. And that's bad for our exports because therefore we become less competitive. So with this more flexible arrangement between employees and employers, that increased productivity, which then slowed our real unit labor costs here. Then as a result, exports became more competitive, and hence external stability was helped achieved by this macroeconomic form of enterprise bargaining. So enterprise bargaining, in conclusion, is beneficial, or it helps this movement towards external stability.